My kids' book, Mouse Turds on Granny's Pillow, is about a cartoon mouse named Margaret, and she wants to get inside Granny's house because Granny's house is warm and Granny bakes a lot of apple pies with cheddar on the top. Cheddar cheese on the top of a pie is the best for baking. And she wants to get in there and warm up and eat some of those cheese crumbs. And Granny is keeping a clean house and she's just not having it. She does not want a mouse in her house. So the story is about how Margaret tries to get in Granny's house and how Granny tries to not allow her in the house. And somehow we see how they become friends and there's cooperation and friendship and a happy ending. My grandma was one of my favorite people. She was somebody who had a lot of differences from me and yet inspired me probably more than anybody else in my family. I keep a picture wall of many of my family members, and she is prominently on that wall with one of my favorite pictures of her, which is her digging in the dirt. She loved being outside, growing vegetables and keeping the yard looking nice. She grew up, she came from Europe and grew up as a farmer in northern Wisconsin, and she loved doing that. She loved that kind of really hard work, and she loved to take care of people, and she loved to cook and clean and really just took pride in everything she did. So those are the things I think I resonate with her, is the hard work. Whatever you're doing, make sure you put your whole passion into it, and really showing people love through things that I cook and making meals and creating art and things like that. As a kid, I loved to read and I loved all kinds of books, but my favorite books were the Madeline series. I loved that she was, a little redheaded girl that lived in Paris and had a dog named Genevieve. And when I finally was able to get a dog, I named that dog after the dog in that book series. I just really loved the stories and how she got into different things and how she had all these friends and, lived in the big house and in Paris. And I loved everything about that, including the illustrations. They still stand out to me as something really special. This book was inspired by a real family story. My grandma found a mouse in her house one day, and she was cleaning and she was trying to get the mouse out of her house. She lived in this cottage on a lake, and it was right across from a cornfield, and the mouse had gotten in there and she was looking for it, and it came time to go to bed and she still couldn't find it. So she rolled up a towel and put it under the door of her bedroom and went to bed. And her intention was to get up the next day and try and look for the mouse and try and get the mouse out of the house. Instead, she woke up and found mouse turds on her pillow. And of course, she was very upset about this. But the more she told this story, the more I found it humorous, because I could picture this little cartoon mouse, slipping into her bedroom and kind of putting on a nightcap and, giving her a kiss goodnight and snuggling in, trying to get warm. So really the story came from this real thing that happened in our family. But as it got told, I kept imagining these characters and how this story would go. And so it started with the story, but the characters came quickly after. For the characters, Margaret the mouse, I really had a vision of her as this kind of beautiful little mouse. She had, in my head, kind of a purpley fur, and she just had these pretty eyes and, and these pretty little ears. And so I, designed them with a Sharpie. I sketched them out. I love using Sharpie in my sketchbooks when I work. And I would as we'd go to different like craft shows and art shows, I would take that extra time with my sketchbook and just kind of keep drawing this mouse. And I did it again and again. And quickly she came into view, Margaret the mouse. And then Granny, of course, I based on my grandma. As I started sketching all of these characters, I then used the Ecoline ink pens to give them color. And I really liked the way that ink worked on the paper, and those are the two things I used to design the characters. If you're somebody that has a kid's book in mind, or you have this desire to write a kid's book, I think the first thing that I would start with is just getting that story down. What can you pull from in your own life? Your own inspiration and the things that bring a smile to your face, that's the best way to get a story together. So start with that, and then just keep thinking about it, and think about something that you can tell in this visual form that you can then read to a kid and share this story together. I think if you start a story in mind and then sketch out details of it and sketch out the scenes, and that's the way that I did it. I went scene by scene. I thought of the story and then thought of the individual scenes that I could then create with these two characters. So it's really important when you're doing something like this to make sure that you create a character that you can do all kinds of different expressions for and different poses, because these characters are going to be telling the story as much as the words on the page are, and you want to make sure that you can visually show all of that. So that would be my recommendation if you want to do this yourself. My grandmother inspires me in many ways, and one of the ways was just this picture that I have of her where she is digging in the dirt, and she's got a shovel, and I decided to paint a picture in honor of her with my own style. I paint in a whimsical style with bright colors. I use paper and ink and other elements. And so I created a picture from the photograph that I love the most about her. And so this picture then, this painting became something that did get entered into a couple exhibits, which I think my grandma would love. One of the exhibits was all about the power of work and the value of it. And it was at the Groman Museum in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. My grandma would have loved the fact that that painting was in that exhibit that represented human endeavor. So it was in there. It was in a public museum in Green Bay, Wisconsin. And so I've created many things from her, but the painting that I made of her is probably my favorite. I was a writer and artist from the time I was a kid. So my grandma knew that I did these things, and she was always supportive of it. She thought it was always a cool thing. And she didn't get to see me turn all of this into my full-time business, where I would become a writer and an artist as part of my job, and to do this creativity thing for everyday work. But she would be thrilled, because she was very much about, following your passion and putting your all into whatever it was you did. So the fact that, I'm doing this and working hard at it would really make her happy. And she would just be thrilled to know that there is a painting that has been in exhibits that was inspired by her. I think she would just be thrilled about that. And also that this book, which was not a funny story to her at the time. I think that she would love the fact that this became a kid's book. I think she'd really think that's funny.